Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron. Welcome to part 3 of the balance discussions from Grinding Gear Games for the upcoming 316 Scourge League. Let's take a read. I'm going to hold as many comments as possible. I know many of you don't necessarily appreciate my takes on all of these things, so I'm just going to read this for you today, and then maybe we can do another discussion video maybe tomorrow, but I'm just going to read this and give you the info today. So, in our upcoming 316 expansion, we're making a number of balance changes. Over the last 2 days, we talked about our plans for flasks and ailment mitigation and core character defenses and recovery. We strongly recommend reading those posts prior to this one. Today's post covers our plans for auras, curses, and elemental damage over time. We've assembled this article as a set of identified problems and our intended solutions. Below each solution is a spoiler tag with the specifics of what we're currently intending to change. Please note that as we're still a couple of weeks out from release, anything here is subject to change based on further testing and your feedback. All right, here's the moment of truth. Support characters, auras, and other reservation effects. The problem, wow, that is by far the longest problem paragraph we've seen over the last 2 days. The reduced reservation stat provides very little benefit at low values, but becomes very powerful when heavily invested in. This allows players to run every aura in the game. It also forces reduced reservation to be balanced around extreme levels of investment, limiting how useful it can be to characters that do not run enormous numbers of reservation skills. Finally, characters that heavily invested in reduced reservation in order to run more skills on mana were also able to reserve life extremely effectively as well with no further investment, rendering this the only sensible way to play most heavily reservation-focused builds. Solution: replace reservation reduction with reservation efficiency. When stacked, reservation efficiency does not allow for infinite auras. This can be given out much more liberally as a result, letting characters run additional reservation effects with only a couple of sources of reservation efficiency. The average character benefits, but the top end of extreme reservation has been made slightly weaker. Here are the specifics. Modifiers to reservation have been replaced with reservation efficiency. Reservation efficiency works by dividing the cost of the reservation effect. 100% increased reservation efficiency would have the cost of all auras. 50% reservation efficiency cuts down cost enough to let you reserve an additional 50% reservation aura. Okay, so 100% reservation equals half of cost of all auras. So there's your ratio. Passives and item modifiers with reduced reservation have been replaced with increased mana reservation efficiency. Generally at double the value of the previous reduced reservation value, but sometimes with different values for balance reasons. This means that a small amount of reservation investment is more impactful than before, while high investment doesn't allow as many auras to be used. The vast majority of reservation efficiency offered is now mana specific in order to prevent reserving both life and mana being the default choice for a build heavily invested in reservation. Generic reservation efficiency and life reservation efficiency are still available on some item modifiers. If not mentioned below, all sources that previously provided reduced reservation, including for specific skills of types of skills, now provide increased mana reservation efficiency at twice the value of the reduced reservation they used to give. Modifiers on existing items are affected by these changes. Yep. Notable passive skills granted by cluster jewels that previously granted reduced reservation of a specific aura now grant 60% increased mana reservation efficiency of that skill for auras that have 50% base reservation and 100% increased mana reservation efficiency of that skill for auras that have 35% base reservation. The Hierophant Sanctuary of Thought notable passive skill now provides 25% increased mana reservation efficiency instead of 10% less mana reservation. Helmet enchants that previously granted reduced reservation of a specific skill now grant the following values of increased mana reservation efficiency for that skill. Existing items will instead have twice the previous reduced reservation value, generally lower than the new values. Enchantments for skills that have 50% base reservation now grant 20 or 30% increased mana reservation efficiency, so on and so forth. 35% base now grant 30-45% reservation efficiency. 25% or flat base is now 50 to 75%. The corrupted implicit modifier on jewels that previously provided 1% reduced mana reservation now provides 2% increased reservation efficiency, not specific to mana. Skyforth now grants 12% increased reservation efficiency, not specific to mana, instead of 6% reduced reservation. Hiri's Truth now grants precision as 100% increased mana reservation efficiency, instead of precision has 50% less reservation. This change applies to existing items. There's a whole bunch of items here. Essence Worm is one of them. Essence Worm now grants 80% reduced reservation efficiency, not specific to mana, instead of 40% increased reservation. Memory Vault gets changed. Shaper and Hunter Influence Shield mods now get changed. Synthesis implicit modifiers are also getting changed. Prism Guardian now grants socketed gems have 30% increased reservations efficiency instead of socketed gems have 25% reduced reservation. Victario's is getting changed. Devouring Diadem, Vivisect, Heretic's Veil, Rot Blood, they're all getting changed. Okay, so there's your reservation solution. Not going to share any of my thoughts. Just reading the info. All right, problem. Characters specialized in maximizing the power of auras provide an absolutely insane amount of damage and defense to party members, making a party with an aura specialized character so much more effective than one without. Remove sources of aura effect from cluster jewels and move the aura cluster jewel types to small cluster jewels so it is no longer possible to continuously stack aura effect for your party. Introduce a new cluster jewel notable to increase the effect of your auras on you for builds that are building auras for their own power. The aura cluster jewel type can now be found on small cluster jewels rather than medium cluster jewels. This makes it more costly and less impactful to stack large numbers of aura cluster jewels. The small passives now grant 6% increased reservation efficiency instead of increased aura effect. Cluster jewel notable passive skills have all had aura effect removed. The increased aura effect of auras on you from Purposeful Harbinger cluster jewel notables now only applies to your own aura effects on you. The Master of Command cluster jewel notable passive skill now grants 10% increased effect of non-curse auras from your skill on enemies, previously 15%. A new cluster jewel notable has been added that grants 10% increased effect of your auras on you. Cluster jewel notable passives that grant reduced reservation to specific auras instead now grant high amounts of reservation efficiency. Yep, we already covered that. Added cluster jewel notable passives that grant high amounts of reservation efficiency to specific auras, as well as some other small bonus. For example, Zealotry has increased reservation efficiency and 10% increased effect of consecrated ground you create. The Jinx Juju Amulet now grants 5 to 10% increased effect of your curses, previously 10 to 15, and 5 to 10% increased effect of non-curse auras, previously 10 to 15. Support characters, curses. The problem. Characters specialized in maximizing the number and power of curses provide far too much damage and defense to party members, making a party with a curse-specialized character so much more effective than one without. Make Curse Cluster Jewels a small cluster jewel, with many of the notables reworked to benefit specific curses significantly, greatly improving a regular character wanting to maximize their curse of choice. Make significant changes to Diodre's skin, as it applies many curses at almost no cost. The Curse Cluster Jewel type can now be found on small cluster jewels, rather than medium cluster jewels. This makes it more costly and less impactful to stack large numbers of Curse Cluster Jewels. To make these jewels more useful for characters using only 1 or 2 curses, we've greatly improved the Cluster Jewel notables, granting benefits to specific curses as well as added new ones. However, they can no longer be found on cluster jewels other than curse type ones. List of cluster jewel notable passives change. Evil Eye, Whispers of Death, and Dark Discourse cluster have been reworked as new curse-themed notable passives. In general, curse effect that applies to all curses no longer exists on cluster jewel notable passives. Lord of Drought, Blizzard Caller, Tempt the Storm, Misery Everlasting, and Exploit Weakness all now grant 40% increased cursed effect of specific curses, previously 25%. Forbidden Words no longer grants 5% increased effect of your curses. It now grants 20% increased reservation efficiency of curse aura skills, previously 4%. Added new curse cluster jewel notable passives that benefit Doom, Marks, and Hexes that previously didn't have their own notables, such as Punishment, Elemental Weakness, Temporal Chains, and Enfeeble. For example, 20% chance for Hexes to be applied at maximum Doom, and Hexes have 50% increased Doom gain rate. Deodre's Skin now grants Hexes from socketed skills can apply 5 additional curses. It previously granted Hexes from socketed skills ignore curse limit. This is so Replica Deodre's Damning has some downside with using it. Now grants 20% less effect of your curses for all skills, instead of reduced curse effect of socketed skills triggered with the Summon Deodre's Effigy skill. The Summon Deodre's Effigy skill now has a short cast time, previously instant. Its cooldown has been removed, previously 0.5 seconds, and now has a mana cost. Existing items will be affected by this curse limit change, though they will only have 20% less curse effect on curses triggered with Summon Deodre's Effigy. Some other uniques have been rebalanced: Replica Deodre's Damning, Wheel of Stormsail's Shield, and Jinx Juju. Those have all been reworked. Okay, elemental damage over time. The elemental damage over time effects of cold damage over time, burning, and ignite are too dependent on elemental overload and elemental equilibrium. Ignites are too dependent on ignite damage multipliers on skills, making skills without ignite multipliers too weak to use ignite with. The solution: greatly improve the base strength of ignite, burning, and cold damage over time, while making elemental overload and elemental equilibrium less powerful or require more investment with damage over time skills. Rebalance skills that could apply ignite effects around the new base damage of ignite and remove the ignite damage multipliers. Player Ignite now inherently deals 150% more damage than before. Previously 50% of base damage over 4 seconds, now 125% of base damage over 4 seconds. Cold damage over time skills now deal more damage. Creeping Frost now deals 18.4 base cold damage per second at gem level 1, previously 16.7, up to 2,225 at gem level 20, so that's not quite doubled. Wintertide Brand is not quite doubled. Cold Snap is not quite doubled. Vol Cold Snap, not quite doubled. Vortex, not quite doubled. Yeah, it didn't double. I believe reading Cold Shack, or reading Shack Central the other day, he was saying it needs to be basically 2 to 3 to maybe even 4 times higher for the change to EO to not just straight up nerf the build. I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering his post right, that's a bummer. Siphoning Trap now deals 16.9 base cold damage, so that got nerfed. No, sorry, that's not quite doubled. That got buffed, but not quite doubled. Okay, there you go. So these appear to be buffs. They appear to be numerical buffs. But that's because a lot of these skill gems required elemental overload to really make them work. Okay, burning skills now deal more damage. All right, Searing Bond is not quite doubled. It's up to 38.99. It was at 24.59. Scorching Ray is up to 6.96. It was previously 4.39. Righteous Fire, not quite doubled, but almost 1,000 damage, base damage more. It also now deals 35% of life and energy shield as base fire damage per second, previously 20%. So it deals more damage to you, but it deals more damage overall. Vol Righteous Fire Okay. It was previously 80%, so that's a pretty big jump. So a lot of people who use Vol Righteous Fire, that'll be good news. Fire Trap. Yep, up by not quite double. Flame Wall. Its secondary debuff now deals up to 2,266, which is almost 1,000, not quite 1,000 in terms of the buff. Infernal Legion support now has minions from supported skills deal fire damage to enemies near them at gem level. Okay, so again a buff, not quite double. Many skills that had an ignite multiplier have had that multiplier removed. The skill has been balanced to compensate for this, if necessary. Certain skills have been rebalanced due to the change to base ignite damage, taking into account whether they're able to take full advantage of elemental overload now. Note that examples below do not include the effect of elemental overload or elemental equilibrium, hence why the ignite value is much higher for many of the skills. So Fireball now has a 25% chance to ignite. It no longer has 50 to 88% more damage with ignite. So now it's just 25% chance to ignite at all gem levels. And because of the base ignite damage changes, ignite with the skill is now 33% higher. Okay, but for a lot of builds, elemental overload was just 40% more damage. I just need to shut up and read. Discharge now has 55% less damage with ailments. Ignite with the skill is not. I'm not going to read all these. Hey guys, they're increasing all the base. They're increasing the bases on every elemental skill. Okay. They're increasing the bases. They took off the multipliers of ignites, and there you go. The Elemental Overload Keystone passive skill now gives more hit and ailment elemental damage to skills if they crit in the last 8 seconds. This means that you can't use a skill rapidly, use a second rapidly hitting skill, making a small amount of critical chance investment much more important to skills taking advantage of elemental overload. Okay, if that skill has crit. Okay, so if your skill crits, I'm so confused. Unless they're nerfing the amount of damage on elemental overload, that's not that big of a change. Well, it's a big change for dot skills. It's not going to be that big of a change for any sort of spell that was already using a hit. I'm just thinking of like brands, for instance. If a player was already using a brand might already crit anyway, if that's their primary source of damage. But Vortex, that's Righteous Fire. Those are two pretty big changes right there, because, yeah, Righteous Fire can't crit. The Elemental Equilibrium Keystone passive skill now applies 25% exposure of the elements not hit with, removing exposure of the elements you hit with. It's now an easy way to apply a strong exposure effect rather than a huge damage boost that we balance an elemental damage time over skills around. Some other skills have been reviewed because of these changes. We will be looking at pure elemental minions to determine what changes are needed here. Oh boy. Move the Elemental Equilibrium Keystone passive to the Ranger section of the passive skill tree, where there is much less existing access to exposure for elemental builds and access to skills that rotate elements such as Wild Strike. Okay. Wild Strike boys get hype. More scaling options have been added to damage over time builds on the passive skill tree and items, raising the top end of the damage over time for well-geared characters. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that once we get the passives tree and items, like once we actually in patch notes day, we'll actually be able to take a look, and this will all mean something, but I'm not going to read all this for right now. This means nothing until the passive tree is actually out. Burning Arrow is too complex for a level 1 skill. Solution: redesign the skill without a secondary stacking burning effect, but with high added fire damage against ignited enemies. Why not just move it to another level? Like, why not just make it available in Act 3 instead of Act 1? Why spend the time to redesign the entire skill when you could just move it to another part of the game? Wouldn't that use less design space? No longer has a stacking burning effect. Now deals 150% base damage at gem level 1, unchanged, up to 214% at gem level 20. Now adds 3 to 4 fire damage to attacks against ignited enemies at gem level 1, up to 201 to 302 fire damage at gem level 20. Now has an attack speed of 90% of base, previously 100%. Now has a 25% chance to ignite, previously 50%. Next problem. Okay, here's the last one. Ignite builds don't have a way to focus their damage on bosses, forcing balance to be the same for clear speed damage and boss damage. Solution: change Flame Surge and introduce a new attack-based mechanic to be able to deal much more burning damage to a targeted enemy. Flame Surge is getting a new burning ground mechanic that deals damage based on ignites on the target. We're investigating a similar mechanic for attacks. Why not just give like what minion builds have, where you have the predator target focus skill, where like once you've marked something as a prey, or is it prey? Target prey? I don't remember, because they've changed the name of it already a couple of times. It's only been out for a year, maybe a little over a year. But where essentially you target, whatever you're targeting takes more damage, and other stuff doesn't take as much. It doesn't get a bonus to damage taken. And it also focuses your minions. It's like, if I'm a spellcaster, why can't, I mean, that's essentially a curse, right? Why can't I essentially point at that thing and saying, this is where I'm focusing my spell, and it's going to do more damage to that thing, but less damage to stuff around it? That seems like that would be kind of like, it's already in the game. We kind of already have it for minions. Like, could we not do that for spellcasters? We want to stress that the above list and posts from the last 2 days aren't final. There are plenty of other balanced topics that we plan to cover in the 316 announcement and patch notes. Thanks for reading through to the end, and please let us know your feedback on these changes and this new approach for communication. All right, so here's my feedback. The only feedback I'm going to give you guys today at Grinding Gear Games is I love that you guys are taking the time, even before announcing the expansion and the content and the league. I love that you're communicating with us and giving us reasons and saying very articulately what the problem is from a design perspective and what the solution is that y'all are working towards. So I greatly appreciate that, Grinding Gear Games. I still think Grinding Gear Games does the best job out of any gaming company on the planet for communicating with players. So thanks everybody for joining us for the last couple of days of reading through this stuff. My 2 cents on this, which I'm sure some of you already can guess, is that having different archetypes in Path of Exile is a good thing. And telling players, hey, you shouldn't build a support character, that's too powerful. You shouldn't build a curse character, that's too powerful. Hey, you shouldn't cleverly use this keystone that makes this whole damage over time archetype viable. You shouldn't do that. We're going to take away a bunch of your damage. But don't worry, we'll buff it through the base. It makes me think back to when there was an interview with a certain couple of members of the Grinding Gear teams, and they said, 315 is just the start of the nerfs that are coming in order to change Path of Exile towards where we want it to be for POE 2. And yeah, I think that's the truth of it. I think there's a lot more nerfs coming. There's a lot more changes coming. A lot more. If you've enjoyed Path of Exile over the last year to 2 years, there's a lot more changes that are on the way. There's a lot more. There's a lot that have even been previewed here over the last 3 days where they've said, look, we're looking into this. We don't even have a solution for it yet, by way of numbers or a particular solution yet. So I think there's a lot of things that are coming that are going to change what POE looks like, feels like, what making builds looks like, and feels like. The game is evolving. So this is part of the reason why I posted what I posted earlier today about thinking that in my opinion, announcing POE 2 was a mistake, or keeping those 2 games as the same thing. I don't know. I haven't played POE 2 yet, so I don't know if I'm going to like it. I do know I've enjoyed my time in Path of Exile 1. And the more Path of Exile 1 ceases to be Path of Exile 1, the more I seem not to enjoy it. That's my feedback. All right, thanks for joining us for the read-through, everybody. Drop us a comment down below with your own thoughts. Let me know. You can feel free to disagree. Feel free to blow me up. Feel free to simply leave your own thoughts and your own takes on these last 3 days. I really do appreciate the way how Grinding Gear Games is going about communicating all of these different things. I think this is the standard. This is the way how things should be communicated, even if I don't necessarily like the things that are being communicated. So thanks so much for joining us, and I hope the 316 Scourge League is the league. A Mirror of Calandra drops for you. If you'd like any more information about the topics we chatted about today, links are provided down below in the video description. The G3 community has grown a ton over the last several years, and that's thanks to viewers like you and faithful Patreon supporters. Big shout out to longtime supporters and first-time supporters for this month.